Alrighty.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pauper Premier League, sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com and Wizards of the Coast. Joseph, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. I just got my face bashed in by some elves and some harsh sustenance. But, you know, fun games.
Yeah, those are some absolutely crazy games. It's a little unfortunate everybody didn't get to see you go off in this game, but I think they'll have definitely some plenty of opportunities in the next couple of matches, thankfully.
Yeah, I think so too. It was really hard to try to Stonehorn lock you out through multiple copies of Longbow and Harsh Sustenance.
Yeah, especially really in that second game. I was actually very nervous in game one there that you were just gonna it was like one snap, one ghostly flicker. I know you weren't 100% there with your mana just yet, but it was just like one snap, one ghostly flicker, and this could be in for a very long game. I didn't really have a whole lot going on in my hand besides those couple Timber Watches. So if you had been able to get that Stonehorn lock going, I would have been in for quite a tough time here. So
I was close. I was definitely cheering in my head a little bit when my opening hand had Stonehorn.
Yeah, for sure. So now I do want to touch really fast if we could get the slide of my deck list up here, where I have a few questions popping up here in the chat about my deck specifically and why I chose a few things. Now, what you've actually been seeing in Elves a lot, quite often lately, has actually been Winding Way has been in the main deck as the option as opposed to Distant Melody. Distant Melody, as you saw, was very explosive, but it's a little risky sometimes. And so it was...
Yeah, I think... But from my side, definitely the switch to Winding Way has been really good for the fans.
Yeah, the Winding Way is a fantastic card. It for those of you who don't know at home, it is basically what Mulch was, which is look at the top 4 cards of your library and put any lands in your hand. But with Winding Way, you can choose land or creature. So you can choose creature and put up to 4 creatures basically into your hand here. So what it actually does is it enables a little bit more consistency than Distant Melody. It also helps for recovery against sweeper effects, so to speak. So why did I switch over to Distant Melody here? If we've generally kind of switched away from it in the main deck lately in the format, largely it's because, I meted here. This was a meta call. I expected Joseph here to be on Familiars. And against Familiars specifically, I really wanted that Distant Melody to start out here. Because that's what enables me to get my Viridian Longbow. That's what enables me to get my Harsh Sustenance. And I've obviously, as you saw maybe in that very last game here, it really, really pulled through and took off. Now, against players like, Brian and Ricardo, it might not do quite as well, which is why then we can bring the Winding Way out of the sideboard and into the main deck. What are your thoughts, Joseph?
Move here. Really worked out really well because as the Familiars deck, I can sort of lock out the creature game plan with series. So Distant Melody allowing you to draw into the non-creature cards that can really go over the top.
Right. So why don't we switch over to your deck, your list, your Familiars list, and maybe kind of explain what's going on in your deck, for those playing at home who maybe might not have as, quite a good idea of what's going on in the deck as you and I might.
So built around Sunscape Familiar and sort of the Mnemonic Wall Flicker engine. So basically the gist of the deck is to put the Sunscape Familiars out, make all your blue cards cost less, and then you can just sort of go off and make your Ghostly Flickers cost 1 mana, and then it's 1 mana, draw 2 cards with buyback, and then once you get the wall online, and then it's sort of over from there. You can have 4. I have actually 4 God Pharaoh's Faithfuls in the main deck. And those can allow you to gain a bunch of life while you're playing all your blue cards. Ephemerate is a new card that's a little bit like a 1-mana Ghostly Flicker, except it's a little bit slower with the wall combo, but I think it's still pretty powerful here, just because it's only 1 mana for basically the same deck.
It's basically, just a better, Ghostly Flicker for some people. The not being as mana intensive is really big. I mean, if you had gotten the Ephemerate down with that Stonehorn Dignitary, I mean, that would have been it.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was fishing for on the last turn of the first game there.
Right, makes sense.
Gives you outs. Just pretty nice in matchups like that where you need to have a Stonehorn lock.
Right.
But other than that, we got the bounce lands and the snaps combined with the familiar to sort of give the deck a nice mana engine. The snap can generate a blue mana when you play it with the familiar out and 2 blue sources. And also with the bounce lands, you can generate even some white and green mana here. We have the green because we got the Nature's Chant in the sideboard.
Yeah, that card is fantastic. So we got a question in chat here. What's the Disdainful Stroke for in the sideboard?
Oh, Disdainful Stroke is a new one that me and Bloodpet came up with. We were having difficulty beating Tron. Tron's a pretty rough matchup. And basically, it counters all of their key cards. Like, their key cards in the matchup are like Demonic Wall, Dinrova Horror, and Mulldrifter, basically.
Right.
Those are like their best premium cards. And so being able to counter those for 1 mana if you have a familiar out, and crucially, the Tron decks have been cutting removal and counters, so our familiars stick just a lot. And it's just like a really clean answer.
Right. We have another one. Someone asked, since this is just a counterspell, well, why not just run counterspells instead?
Well, the key thing with Disdainful Stroke is that it gets cost reduced by Sunscape Familiar. So if you have a Sunscape Familiar out, your counterspell will still cost blue. But with a Sunscape Familiar and a Disdainful Stroke, the Disdainful Stroke will cost only 1 blue mana, which is pretty key.
And there it is. All right. So looks like we're gearing up to get started here. Let's bring it back on to us here. So Joseph, what do you think about these decks, these matchups?
Okay, who's playing right now?
We have Brian Coval versus Ricardo Mattana. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And we're going to see Sultai Teachings versus Boros Snow. Or Snow Boros, however you want to call it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. This is a Bosch and Roll. Brian Coval came with sort of his own rogue deck, and our Mattana is playing what looks to be likely the best deck in the format right now, this red-white Skyfisher deck.
Yeah, there's a couple different variations of that kind of deck going around.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw a tweet that said you could play aggro Astrolabe, you could play mid-range Astrolabe, but you could play control Astrolabe, and it's kind of true.
That was actually one of our other competitors here, Evan Irwin, tweeted out about that.
Yeah, that's who it was.
So
I love it.
I'm very interested to see how this is going to go. Ricardo's list is a much more of a traditional like mid-range kind of deck, a little bit dirtily, doesn't really has a whole lot going on. But then we have Brian's list, which is pretty much like hard control. If you've never seen a Teachings list go off in Pauper, it's pretty much just like a full-on traditional control deck, and arguably like the most actual traditional control list in the entire format. So
he's just splashing for the what's it called? The thing that makes 1/1s, Sprout Swarm.
He has Havenwood Wurm and Weather the Storm. So it looks like we are ready to start though. So let's get going. Let's go check out this match. It's got some good games going on, and I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah. It's going to be a hot match. Ooh, so
it's a little hard to see Ricardo's hand there, but we do see a Palace Sentinels, Thraben Inspector, Journey to Nowhere, Boros Garrison, Lightning Bolt, Faithless Looting. I hope he's got a just like a regular land. I'm sure we'll see it pretty soon here.
It's like we're in the main phase, so he has kept, And
he
he's gonna play
went
the Ash Barrens.
Ash Barrens. That's really cool. That's actually a really, really heads up play, because then you can just play the Ash Barrens, play the Boros Garrison, pick up Ash Barrens, float the mana for the Ash Barrens, pick up the Boros Garrison. Apologies for the technical difficulties, everybody. We're just trying to get this kind of fixed up and set it up here. And so that's what he's going to do. He's going to pick up the Ash Barrens, floating the colorless mana, and then cycle away the Ash Barrens to pick up a mountain, looks like. So,
and this is actually pretty interesting play here, because Brian Coval, we can see, is holding the Recoil.
Yeah.
Be able to bounce the bounce land back, setting far behind. So we're going to have to see what Ricardo can develop before that goes off.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, just to make sure, that Ricardo even just stays on the board, but this could really just set him back tremendously.
Like Coval has 2 copies of Ash Barrens in his hand himself.
No, those aren't Ash Barrens. Those are deserts.
I thought it was like an alternate art Ash Barrens or something.
This
is one of the new cards.
100% desert. Desert actually entered the format as a result of the unification of Pauper that happened quite recently. What are your thoughts on that, Joe? I know I saw that in your list that you are running Mystic Remora in the sideboard. That's another new card.
I think it's pretty fun. I like the Remora a lot. I think it's really good. It like kills Tron. It's even pretty solid versus the Boros decks.
Yeah, and here's that Recoil play. So we're gonna be in for a heck of a time.
You hate to see when you're playing bounce lands is a way for someone else to touch your bounce land. You do not want someone else touching your bounce land.
This is definitely going to put Ricardo a little bit behind here. But at the same time, if you actually look at Brian's hand, he doesn't really have a whole lot going on here.
Let's have the Teachings, though. The Teachings is going to sort of allow him to move into the late game and start developing his plan. He can always go get another Teachings.
Yep.
And he's hitting land drops. He's got the Dimir Aqueduct. He's got his next 4 lands.
Exactly. So for those who can't quite tell, maybe aren't as familiar with the format, Mystical Teachings is 3 mana and a blue, instant speed. Search your library for a instant spell or a card with flash, which is why he has the Havenwood Wurm in his deck, and then has a flashback cost from the graveyard of, I believe, 5 and a black or 6 and a black. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's 5 and a black for Teaching.
5 and a black. That's what I thought. I always get that one, the flashback cost on that one confused a little bit with Forbidden Alchemy.
They're pretty similar.
Yeah.
Cabal's list here, and it doesn't look like he has like a cap size or something to really out. It has like a bunch of value stuff. Like he can maybe get a Weather the Storm, a Devious Cover-Up, or probably just like an AK or another Teaching.
Mm-hmm. So, and we got a Diabolic Edict. So, Ricardo was able to stick the landing on that Seeker of the Way, but that Edict is just going to eat it up.
Definitely a solid answer to the Seeker. No chance for tricks or anything.
Yeah. Now, the one thing that we're going to definitely see here is Brian's holding up 2 blue mana, so he's going to try and bluff a counterspell. But Ricardo, if he really wants to try it, he's going to get that Palace Sentinels. Doesn't look like he's going to try for it, though. So we're just going to have to see how this one ends up playing out. He's probably going to go for the Faithless Looting here and see if that resolves. Yeah. But we're probably going to see the Palace Sentinels probably in the next turn or so.
Definitely next turn, he's probably going to want to try to get something going, whether it's Palace Sentinels or if he can find like a Prophetic Prism or an Astrolabe.
Mm-hmm. So Ricardo ended up ditching the mountain and the plains. If I was him in this situation, I feel like I kind of probably would have wanted to go and take out that Journey to Nowhere here. Like, we know that Brian's running some number of creatures, but realistically, the number of creatures he's running is a little bit on the lower side. And so the Journey probably wouldn't be as effective most of the time.
Oh, that's definitely an interesting play. But I really love that he's just slamming the Palace Sentinels here. I feel like you just sort of have to make him have it and rewarded here.
No fear whatsoever. So we're just going to see Ricardo just completely go off here.
Definitely in the driver's seat.
Yeah, he's very much in the driver's seat right now. The only thing I really wish we could see is him to draw an artifact like a Arcum's Astrolabe or a Prophetic Prism, so he could start getting some value in with that those Glint Hawks. That Executioner's Capsule definitely kind of hurts there, but we'll see how that plays out here.
Interesting. It might let Coval steal the Monarch.
Yes, but that also
play a land that last turn.
Yeah. What's probably going to end up happening though is Ricardo's probably just going to bolt away the Trinket Mage. No. Looks like he's going to Faithless Looting again. If I'm reading what it feels like he's going to probably do here, I think he might be debating like, do I want to go for the Palace Sentinels? Do I want to go for the Faithless Looting, or do I just bolt the Trinket Mage?
He might go for the looting to try and find a land and Astrolabes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll just try to attack first.
And that's what it looks like he's doing. Which is really interesting because that, obviously tells Brian, like, there's got to be some removal, more creatures. But even if there was more creatures, there's just the Executioner's Capsule just sitting right there on the board. And there's the Firebolt.
Coval's probably not going to get to steal the Monarch.
No, Ricardo's probably going to sit with that Monarch for quite some time, which actually could hurt him in the long run. You might actually see there's a potential opportunity for Ricardo to just end up milling out because of the Monarch. Remember, Monarch is not a may; it is a must.
That should. The decking clock, Ricardo should have a long time, and I think that the Monarch ability does favor him pretty heavily.
Yeah.
To Brian, he just gets to keep on hitting his land drops. He draws another copy of Dimir Aqueduct. Yeah. Land drops in a slow matchup like this is very powerful in Pauper.
Yep. And it's kind of even better right now. So what we're also seeing happen is we've also seen Ricardo Bajuka bogged away Bosch's Mystical Teachings. So there's no flashback shenanigans happening here. It's all just whatever Brian can find off the top of the deck, basically. So it's pretty apparent that Ricardo's pretty clearly, like you said, in the driver's seat. Just needs to probably find just a little bit more in terms of lands to really kind of start getting there a little more.
No, definitely needs some lands, and there's one off the top, but he also really needs a Prophetic Prism type of effect so that he can start developing pressure in the form of these Glint Hawks and Skyfishers.
Yep. So that second Bajuka Bog there removes the Grim Harvest from Brian's graveyard. So this is really, really creating some interesting gameplay here.
Otherwise, but it would keep looping the creatures in and out of his graveyard, giving him basically infinite value.
Right, so he would just constantly get, here's my Archaeomancer, here's my Trinket Mage, and we would just back, forth, go. And, we would just, that would leave Ricardo in a tight spot to really, try and get in there for some damage. And this is
definitely getting rewarded for holding the Bajuka Bog the previous turn.
Yeah. So, but it's really good here too, because by playing the core Skyfisher, Ricardo actually picked up the Bajuka Bog again. So if Brian attempts any, kind of graveyard shenanigans or whatever, then Ricardo can just Bajuka Bog it away. The one thing, though, is that there is 3 deserts on Brian's side of the battlefield, which is going to make any of these hits, really tough.
Any creature, right? Wow.
Target attacking creature, yep.
Been dealt.
So what's probably going to happen now is we're probably going to see that Palace Sentinels come down pretty hot.
And the prismatic strands can't even protect from it because the desert's colorless.
Yep. So that's some really interesting tech. Like in a format where prismatic strands is just king. I mean, not that it's been so hot lately. It's actually been getting taken out of a lot of like the like Astro mid-range kind of decks lately. But it still shows up, a pretty respectable amount of the time. But the fact that just it does nothing against Desert is just huge.
Desert's definitely a card I didn't really even like in the deck list. Incredibly powerful effect in this type of matchup. We've never seen that can do so much.
Brian's got Weather the Storm. Found Weather the Storm off of Augur of Bolas. So, wow. This is going to create some really interesting gameplay now, more so than we've already been seeing. Because now Brian can go, hey, I want to play Weather the Storm, and then pick up Weather the Storm with Archaeomancer.
A lot of life here. Solve the problem of cards. He still just doesn't really have an engine going.
This is really cool. This is a really sweet play. So he's playing the Archaeomancer, holding priority, and then he's going to basically just cast the Weather Storm here, gain a whole ton of life, and then get the Weather Storm back from the graveyard.
Coval is definitely not going to die anytime soon. He's got a lot of life points.
And depending on how these plays go here, we actually might see Brian actually take the Monarch. We do have a bunch of creatures coming down still here from Ricardo. We're going to see, like, we've got the Seeker of the Way. We've got the Core Skyfisher. And yes, we have the Journey to Nowheres. But the big takeaway here, like the one thing that's really hurting Ricardo here is he's not drawing any of his mana rocks. He's not drawing any of his, like, very many white sources. I actually kind of starting to feel like, getting rid of that planes out of his hand with that Faithless Looting is kind of coming back to bite him a little bit here.
It definitely is. With only one white source for 5 white cards in his hand, restricted a lot. But Skyfisher and Glinthawks are basically just bricks at this point. Yeah.
Skyfisher isn't quite as bad, but it's definitely pretty rough with the Glinthawk. I'm honestly, with how many cards we've seen from Ricardo so far, I'm actually very surprised that we haven't seen a single mana filtration rock just yet.
A bit unlucky.
Yeah.
The counterspell drawn from Brian here, a big problem for Ricardo, because if he is able to find a mana rock and Coval is sort of what it looks like is going on in this game, he might just counter the mana rock.
Yep. And we're probably just going to see the counterspell right here for the Seeker of the Way, which is exactly what's going to happen. So
I think that is good for Mattana right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like, though, I would rather have kept wanted the Seeker on the battlefield as opposed to the Skyfisher, because the Seeker of the Way can obviously get really big. You can pump it up through some, he's got like the Galvanic Blast, the Journey to Nowhere, the Prismatic Strands. You could even Prismatic Strands just for the heck of it, just, to cast it, get out of your hand, make your Seeker that much bigger, and Galvanic Blast, put it out of desert kill range.
Definitely an interesting play.
And there's the Ancient Dens. Now we can actually start to see a little bit more of the white cards coming through.
Hawks are now available as 1 mana bountiful land 2/2s.
Yeah. But I think we're still going to be a little bit slow on that to get going here. Obviously, Ricardo played the Bajukabog to start, and we are seeing the Skyfisher picking up the Bajukabog again. And it's really good that he's playing with these Bajukabogs so well to be able to keep Brian's graveyard at bay.
Only trying to shut off the whole graveyard angle that Brian could. Brian, he really hasn't drawn any card advantage. He's just played a couple Augurs, a random Archaeomancer, but he's not getting his engine online.
Oh yeah, Ricardo is 100% winning the card advantage race here, but the big problem is that he's just not seeing the cards that he really needs to take over. There's the Prophetic Prism though, so we finally hit it, but Brian has the Devious Cover-Up, so we're just going to see that. Wow, no counters. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little surprised about that.
I think that if you're paying attention to this game, then it seems pretty clear that Ricardo doesn't have a Prism. He's played Fishers bouncing, simply not what you want to do with the Skyfisher.
Right. Although it has actually worked out for Ricardo quite well, picking up those Bojuka Bogs.
It's definitely been a heads-up play from his spot, but you'd much rather pick up the Prism.
Absolutely, 100%. So in with the Palace Sentinels, Desert is not going to do anything. I'm actually very surprised that we haven't seen a Devious Cover-Up used here yet.
I guess maybe he doesn't want to expose it to Bojuka Bog because it's maybe his win condition.
That makes some sense actually here, yes. Even though he is only running one Devious Cover-Up in his deck. There's another Prophetic Prism, so that's pretty sweet. And Ricardo's being real heads up here. He's only attacking in with Palace Sentinels, so he's not attacking in just yet with the Skyfisher, though we probably will see Skyfisher plays in the near future here. Whew, and another Glinthawk too. That's huge.
Draw here.
So yeah, so Ricardo's going to be able to pick up Prophetic Prism, replay Prophetic Prism. Brian might counter it, but I think it's a little unlikely. And then Ricardo can just Glinthawk again and pick up the Prophetic Prism and replay it one more time.
For Ricardo is just very powerful. He's able to develop pressure while still generating more and more cards.
Brian found the Mystical Teachings. Look at that.
Get his engine online. He can maybe even go get another AK here and just start advantage.
And that's exactly what he's going to do. So we're probably just going to see another AK for try and draw some more Counterspell, trying to get some more card advantage just while the opportunity is available.
Yeah. And he's definitely looking to hit more AKs and a way to answer this board.
Yeah. And he found a third AK too. Look at that. So now Brian's sitting on a whole mess of stuff. Look at that. Weather the Storm with a storm count of 7 is going to gain Brian 21 life. And that storm count does include the Weather Storm that actually was cast. So
I'm just winning this game now?
Pretty much. I mean, it's definitely going to be really tough at this point for Ricardo to kind of come back, especially since there's 2 Mulldrifters in Brian's hand. And with all the mana available to him, I definitely feel like Brian's kind of turning the corner here pretty well.
I definitely didn't expect him to untap with 7 cards in hand after he 1 card in hand.
Yeah, and the accumulated knowledge is there too. We hit number 4. I think I missed it whether or not Ricardo had played a land drop or not. But if he hadn't, he could have played the Bojuka Bog and just wiped out those AKs, wiped out the Mystical Teachings in the yard before Brian could really go off. But now Ricardo is in some real trouble.
It was end step.
That was all end step? Wow.
Yeah. You're on the stack.
Interesting.
But the Bog is going to come down and get all of the AKs, but they've already done their job. You played 4 AKs in 1 turn.
One turn cycle, pretty much. So that's just wild. The card advantage from AK is insane, especially if you have an actual mirror. If you have a mirror going on, then it gets wild because then you start seeing like AK draws for 6 cards, AK draws for 7 cards.
Gosh. The legendary 8-card AK.
Yeah, it's wild.
I've never seen one, but
sometimes you would see these kind of things happen in Legacy, but it's been quite a while since we've seen these kind of things happen in Pauper. you know,
Hey,
but accumulated knowledge has kind of been taking over the format a little bit more since Gush got banned.
I like to see AK.
Yeah, seeing AK again is really cool, and it definitely provides some really interesting back and forth play. Because then there's a lot of people who don't realize that accumulated knowledge says it counts the number of accumulated knowledges in all graveyards. So since it covers all graveyards, like we said, you can see those 7, 8 draw accumulated knowledges, and then you have to think, well, do I play my accumulated knowledge? Because then my opponent draws cards with accumulated knowledge, and I would draw 1 card, but they would draw 2. And then there's a lot of back and forth between that makes things kind of really interesting at that point.
Oh, the Glint Hawks here are getting Echoing Decayed.
Yeah, and that's going to be very rough. I really feel like, especially at this point, Brian's pretty firmly in the driver's seat right now.
So many cards. He's hit all of his land drops for the entire game.
Yeah, you've got a Doomblade here. You've got 2 Chainer's Edicts. So very soon, in very short order.
Wow.
That's interesting. So Ricardo's going to call blue here. Oh.
He's trying to stop the Monarch, I see.
Yeah, he's trying to, hold and retain the Monarch, but Brian's not having any of it. And we're just going to see, we got the Galvblast, but that might just get Devious Cover-Up. Brian's definitely considering it here.
Just going to have the last laugh, as he's got another copy of Galvanic Blast in the grip.
Yeah, so what we're just going to end up seeing here is Chainer's Edict and another Chainer's Edict. And we're probably just going to see that Mulldrifter come back down here again, the second copy.
Well, that's going to threaten to steal the Monarch again next turn.
Yeah.
Hearts.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we're actually seeing the Mulldrifter come down this turn. So Ricardo's definitely got another turn here. And one thing to note here is that Brian does not have mana open for the Devious Cover-Up, and is definitely bluffing another Counterspell.
Yeah, it looks like he wanted to spend his mana on removal cards and up this turn.
Right.
The bog
we definitely have an interesting comment mentioned here in chat that it's important to note, too, that Brian's at 16 cards. Ricardo's at 18. So the real question then is, does Brian actually want the Monarch? Or does he want to just control the game long enough that he ends up milling out Ricardo?
Yeah, that might be what he's going for, actually. He only needs like about 9 more turns to mill out Ricardo.
Yeah, so because then we can literally just go, Brian here would go Edict again, and you can Mulldrifter just to hold back other creatures. And, at that point, it becomes a matter of, can Ricardo even deal enough damage in the however 9 turns that he has left to actually take out Brian? I'm not sure that he can.
Yeah, I don't know. And notably, 10 minutes left on his clock. I know it probably won't come down to that, hopefully, but what?
Yeah, this is really great. And Brian is still also holding 3 Dismal Backwaters, which means he has even more opportunities to gain a whole ton of life here.
Okay, here comes the Augur. Gonna try to get Brian more cards.
Yeah.
They're just block sticks here. They're
Pretty
not ever
much.
gonna hit the face.
Yeah, at this point, even I don't know that Brian could even deal enough damage in time to be able to take out Ricardo. So I think it really is going to come down to the mill strategy.
Be able to get enough creatures. If he just sort of holds his creatures, develops as much pressure as he can.
And there it is. So Ricardo has scooped it up, and we're going to go take a look at our sideboards in just a second, just as soon as we get our layover switched over here. Here we go. So can't see Ricardo quite as well here. But
Hydroblast, and with this improvised hexproof guy.
Yeah. So that was definitely a fantastic game there. There was a lot of great plays back and forth. And it's just all in all, just very interesting to watch here. Now, we're definitely seeing a lot of back and forth here, things being, taken out, put in, what have you. We've definitely seen Ricardo's removed the prismatic strands, has removed Journey to Nowheres and Oblivion Rings, and even some of the like bolts and everything. We've seen the Pyroblast come in, Red Elemental Blast. So he's running like a whole bunch of blasts there. Notably, we have now Red Elemental Blast back in this format. So that's a big plus for me as far as I'm concerned for judging.
Yeah.
We've definitely had like at my local shop, I actually play at Cool Stuff Games Maitland, which is the primary like the flagship location for Cool Stuff Inc. And we had so we had a match one time where a player brought, like, they wanted to play Grixis Delver right before the Gush banning took effect, and he came to the field with multiple copies of Red Elemental Blast and Blue Elemental Blast in his sideboard, in addition to Hydroblast and Pyroblast. And unfortunately, what had to happen was the cards had to be removed from his deck, and they had to be replaced with basic lands. And that was a very common that was pretty much the only solution that we as judges had. And now, thankfully, we don't have to do that anymore. So it's very exciting.
Coming.
Yeah, it's definitely been very much so. So we're in it again here. We've got a whole lot going on. Ricardo's not really sitting on a whole lot of gas necessarily in terms of like creatures and things he can do, but he's got 3 Pyroblasts and a Red Elemental Blast. But and Brian's sitting here with not hitting any lands. But
yeah, I think that's definitely the craziest part of this game so far, is that Brian kept a 1-land hand with an Astrolabe and bricked off.
Yeah.
Definitely seems like a kind of questionable keep.
Yeah, it really does. But it is notable that Brian does have quite a bit of a tenure under his belt. He's a very experienced player. He's, I believe, won vintage championship for, like, I believe Eternal Weekend, one of them. He made top 8 of one of the more recent SCG events, and he's also even won a whole invitational. So he's definitely a very good player. But this was definitely not quite the hand I would have capped.
And wow, the Skyfisher draw for Ricardo here is just he's actually bouncing the land here, which is an interesting play. Instead of missing a land, he wants to keep up.
It was definitely a very interesting play, but now Brian's starting to get those lands, so we're definitely going to see a pretty quick paced clock here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Brian loses the Hydroblast. So we're going to see some interesting gameplay happen here now. So even though Ricardo is a little on the back pedal in terms of like his own land count as well, I think he's pretty firmly in the driver's seat right now.
Brian just didn't get to play the game for the first couple turns, while at least Ricardo was able to develop some artifacts, flyer, and now follow it up with a Seeker of the Wind.
Yep. And unfortunately, Brian does have some answers. Like, there is a Doomblade now in that hand, which unfortunately Ricardo can't counter. But for like any other counters, we do have like Hydroblast, or we do have the Pyroblast, we do have the Red Elemental Blast. You might notice if you're looking at the screen here that Ricardo's Pyroblasts are have a little white border around them, but the Red Elemental Blast does not. They are very slightly different wordings on those cards that allow you to actually cast Pyroblast even if like the target isn't something that you can destroy or counter. And that makes it a viable difference for certain decks, but really in Pauper, only deck that actually affects is the one we know as Is It Blitz, for the most part.
Can pump a Seeker here, though.
Yeah, absolutely, which could definitely be a pretty big play. But unfortunately, there's no Seekers staying on the battlefield anytime soon here. So
Brian miracles a land here. He's able to keep himself in the game, and Ricardo, he's just trying to build an advantage.
Yeah.
Hits another land.
Yeah. So at this point, we're definitely starting to see a little bit more in way of there's definitely some back and forth action going on here. Ricardo wisely not playing a creature and activating Relic for the first part of the cost. And he's going to Brian's going to Mystical Teachings, but Ricardo says, you're not having any of that. So we're going to see
embarrassing in the face of a Relic here. He's just able to take it out as the only card in the graveyard for free, basically.
Pretty much. And we're probably going to see the Palace Sentinels come right down here. There's no mana open, so the defenses are down, and Ricardo's probably just coming right back into it. Now, Brian's definitely going to have access to that Chainer's Edict, and also going to have access to that Havenwood Wurm here if he really wants to play it like that. But it looks like we're just going to see the Edict come down pretty easily.
How much does the Wurm cost? 6?
Wurm is, I believe, 7. 7 mana.
A 5/5 trample with flash?
Yep. So you just wait until you're able to, and then just sneak it on in. But Ricardo's just going to be drawing so many cards that it's pretty clear that even though he doesn't really have the gas right now, he definitely has the setup to really just kind of take over this game.
Really going to be able to just keep drawing cards off the Monarch, fishes that he draws, and these 2 red Elemental Blasts are basically his fence to anything Brian can get started.
And even if the Wurm itself comes down, Ricardo can always just double Galvanic Blast it and then just counter any of the counters. So I think as of right now, Ricardo feels like he's in the driver's seat, but it kind of remains to be seen a little bit.
The Seeker here is definitely going to let him here.
Yeah, so we're probably going to see a Mystical Teachings activation from Brian, which is probably then going to get countered by Ricardo. And it's going to be really interesting because then what's going to happen is Brian's going to dispel the dispel the counterspell to the Mystical Teachings, which then Ricardo is going to counter that one as well. Oh, so
I like that he let it resolve here.
So because then so Ricardo just goes for the Relic, and then Brian just plays one of these other spells. So the Weather Storm, try and gain a bunch of life, and in the process then Brian can just get rid of the Weather the Storm and keep the Teachings up for next turn.
I like that chose not to fight over the Teachings because of the sort of being able to exile the Teachings for free with the... I think that was a pretty nice play around Dispel.
Yeah, for sure.
He's going to actually be able to get it here. Wait in. Right, of course.
Yeah. You're not going to quite get there, unfortunately. There's the red Elemental Blast, so... Ricardo's just saying, nope, not having any of that. And this is some really good play now, because now Ricardo's just going to be able to take over this board state again. We're going to be able to see the Palace Sentinels come down, the Seeker of the Way come down. Probably not both this turn, we're probably just going to see a second Seeker of the Way, because Ricardo's probably going to want to hold up some mana. But Ricardo's definitely got to play kind of quick here. He's running out of time.
A pretty scary... timeout, but and the Seeker, go with both here.
Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, we would love to have like the games go longer, as you may have seen in other kind of similar leagues to us. Big shout out to Randy Bueller and Athena Froelich for like their super leagues. They were a tremendous inspiration to this particular league, and they were a big help, big support in kind of helping us get this off the ground a little bit, giving us advice, feedback, thoughts, what have you. So in those kind of leagues in the past, you would pretty much give the players unlimited time so that we could just kind of see the match as it should play out and really kind of give players a way to, or viewers to see how these should play out. Unfortunately, there was a recent change to the clocks that doesn't really let us set up the match that way any longer, but we're still doing the best we can, and hopefully Ricardo was able to get there quite effectively and quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes me wonder if there's any way that we could, like, if Ricardo does win this game and they do go to game 3, another match and have someone concede and then just play another game.
It's going to be what it is.
Okay.
So, we're just going to have to see and hope for the best.
Ricardo, he's got a Astrolabe here, which is going to pump up his Seekers, let him get in for
no. Doomblade says no. Cannot counter that one, unfortunately. So Ricardo's just going to have to make do with what he's got.
All right, and here comes the Relic activation. And I think Ricardo is pretty favored in this position, I think.
Yeah.
To draw multiple cards a turn.
But I think what's going to end up happening is that we're going to see Brian, unfortunately, win this match due to the time.
Look like it's going to be the outcome here.
It's a little unfortunate that Ricardo's kind of snapping off those galvanic blasts here, because if Brian is able to take off with that Havenwood Wurm, there's not really now a way that Ricardo can deal with it effectively.
Yeah, Ricardo's way of dealing with it, his plan here is to just, I guess, hit the face as much as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Face is the place. Upstairs, let's go. So, and that's some really interesting play, because we're going to see quite a stack here, no? I'm a little surprised that we didn't see another Pyroblast go off there to stop that accumulated knowledge.
Kind of interesting. I guess he wants to rid as much as possible. Like, there's a chance that the AK just draws a thing.
And there it is. So Brian sees the right on the wall here and just gives it so we can get another round or another match in, or another game in here real fast and take us through. And we're just checking real fast about seeing if we want to just set up another match here, post board here real fast with our competitors to make sure whether or not we are able to get going here.
So it looks like we might actually get a match with a new clock here, which would be pretty sweet to see the game 3 play out.
That does look like what we're going to do here. I'm hearing from all of our competitors and our producer. So for right now, we're just going to bring it back to myself and Joseph. Joseph, what do you think of these games so far?
Pretty crazy. Both games, Ricardo got his Monarch online, and it seemed like he was really far ahead. First game, I thought Brian pulled out a pretty miraculous victory. Like, that end step AK.
Yeah, those were wild. That was just a whole chain of accumulated knowledge just going straight off. That was unreal.
That was pretty insane. That was definitely like the nuts dream AK.
Yeah,
I don't know. It makes sense that Ricardo won. I think he should be favored with 5 copies of
the blast. Yeah, those things put in some serious work here, and the fact that we're pretty much giving them a fresh clock here, just like we would in any other kind of league or anything, and we're definitely going to be able to see them in full force and make sure we get a proper match going on. so everybody else can see what's going on. So in case you haven't caught it, first off, let me just say I'm Kendra Smith. This is Joseph Harani, and aka 420 Dragon. You may recognize him from some various Pauper content, and he also was the second place at the Los Angeles MCQ.
Was the Pauper MCQ.
Wasn't that event wild?
It was pretty fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, and there was a lot of people that came out to that and showed up for it, and it was a blast. And I really hope we see more of those, and not just in paper. Wouldn't it be awesome if we saw those on Magic Online as well? That
would be sick. I would definitely play a MCQ online.
Absolutely. Now that Pauper's an officially recognized format, I really hope that we start to see that in the very near future. So, so as of now, we are right in between rounds between Ricardo Mattana and Brian Coval, and they are both 1-1. Our timer clock just got a little tight for us going into this game here, so we just wanted to make sure real fast that our players had a fresh clock, so we could give them ample time to give all the viewers at home here the best show possible. I'm real excited to see what they're doing, because these last two games were pretty exciting. There's a lot of interaction and a lot of back and forth play, and certainly quite a little bit longer than our match, Joseph.
Quick, it was like 5 turns max.
Yeah, I believe I saw Alex was saying that the win for me came on turn 4 both games.
That was pretty quick match. But this definitely feels like a bit more of like a marquee Pauper match where it's grindy, a slog fest. Every 2-for-1 matters.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game with Pauper. There's so many wild things, and I think that's what a lot of people miss. The format is it's a format of commons, but just because it's a format of commons doesn't mean you can't see some really strange or really powerful plays happen.
Pretty sweet. I love the sort of grindy 1-for-1 nature of Pauper. It makes it feel like, you're scrapping, you're out there trying to get a 2-for-1,
Yeah, for sure. So if we could have Rich maybe pull up one of the decks, probably. I mean, we already saw Brian's list. Let's take a look at Ricardo's list a little bit here. Just gotta see what he's got going on here.
You got his list here?
We sure do. Take a look at it, Joseph. See, what do you think about this? This is pretty much a more up-to-date version of what we used to see in Boros Monarch lists. But this one's been updated to feature Arcum's Astrolabe front and center. It's fully replacing, Alchemist's Vial here. And you can just easily pick it up with Glinthawk, pick it up with Core Skyfisher, replay it. Same with Prophetic Prism, and casting it for 1 mana instead of casting Astrolabe for 1 mana as opposed to the Vials for 2 mana. That's a huge deal.
It is a new card out of Modern Horizons here, and it is just insane. I think it might be currently the best card in Pauper.
Absolutely, and I know there may have been some controversial. It may have been in a bit of a controversial opinion, but I actually put out a whole article yesterday. I don't know if you read it, talking about why the card might actually be a problem in the format. There's people who think it's a fantastic card in the format, and there's people kind of like me who think it's a little scary. Just seeing how much it's overtaking the format. Obviously, we're not whipping out like any calls for bannings or anything just yet. It's way too early to really even be thinking about that. But man, it's everywhere.
It's such like an insidious card because it's not really something that you fight against. Answer to Arcum's Astrolabe. It's like a 1 mana cantrip that also just does this really powerful effect.
Yep. And it basically is coming down to if there's ever a deck that you see that runs more than 1 color, you pretty much want to be running Arcum's Astrolabe in that list. Once somebody, I think when you mentioned Evan Irwin's tweet and how he mentioned all the different variations of Astrolabe, and And in there, someone commented like, well, what about Astrolabe Elves or a combo or something? And I went, you know what? I actually kind of wonder how that Astrolabe would play in a deck like Elves for all these little splashes. Obviously, you're running Distant Melody sometimes. You're running Harsh Sustenance. And even if you just have like 2 or 3 extra, it's just a little bit to get you just a little bit further in your game plan.
Yeah, it's definitely super powerful. Able to fix a mana so easily. But does it only cost 1 mana? It's basically like a tap land. The land part.
Awesome. So we're back ready to go for game 3 against Brian Coval and Ricardo Mattana. So Brian's going to take the lead here. And what do you think of these hands here? Ricardo's down to 5 cards.
Is, Ricardo's hand is 5 cards.
That hand looks rough. Brian's is still a little slow to kind of get fully rolling here, but it's going to get rolling very, very fast.
Definitely has some card advantage tools available. Next 3 land drops, able to sort of really needs an Astrolabe or a Prism here.
Yeah. So we're probably just going to see here is the Seeker of the Way come down. And then Brian's just going to end up going for the Accumulated Knowledge.
Like the AK end of turn.
So someone's asking what is the 4/4? That is the 4/4 improvise with hexproof for, I believe it's 5 and a blue mana. It's called a Bastion Inventor, if I recall correctly.
Oh, I think you're right. I was going to say Bastion Artificer, but no, I think you're right.
Let me check here.
And so, we got the
Bastion Inventor
coming down. Okay, Bastion Inventor. Okay, so what he does with this Bojuka Bog here for
he may cast it, he may not. So what he's going to do here, he's definitely casting it, and then what he's going to do is pick it right back up with that Core Skyfisher again. Not really, and that's not really the worst play here. On one hand, yes, it would be good to have the holding up the Pyroblast, but at the same time, I mean, what else is he really doing? He doesn't really have that much else going on in his hand. Although at the same time, that probably could be a bit of a dead giveaway to Brian that Ricardo just really doesn't have anything.
Doesn't have anything, but I like that he's playing out the Core Skyfisher here. He needs to develop a clock and put pressure on Brian. Give himself a chance in this game.
So I'm seeing some questions as to why did the clock reset? Remember, this is not really a tournament so much as it is a bit of a showcase of the format and what we're able to do. That way, we can try and get some more players interested in this awesome format that we've come to know and love over years and years. So by resetting the clock and bringing it into game 3, we're able to actually see a proper game in action as opposed to Ricardo timing out after only 2 minutes.
It's just not a very satisfying way for our match to end. We'd much rather have a...
Lost you there a little bit there, Joseph. But yeah, I totally get you. It's just not a satisfying experience, unfortunately. But so we're just trying to make sure that everybody's got the best opportunity to go in here best we can.
Brian's hand here, he untaps and draws an AK, but he doesn't have a land to play yet for the AK, or we could just see him. It's a land drop.
For sure. So what do we got? And it's really interesting because what we also saw, so Brian at this point probably knows a bunch of the stuff that's in Ricardo's hand because Ricardo picked up an Ancient Den and picked up the Bojuka Bog. So Brian pretty much knows at least 2 of the cards in Ricardo's hand currently.
He does know about the bog and the in here.
Yeah, so we're gonna see one of those Skyfishers just bites the dust here.
Still haven't seen Brian find a 5th land, and if Brian gets stuck here, this could actually give Ricardo a bit of a way into the game.
It certainly can, and it's definitely something interesting here that Brian's just kind of in a very awkward spot right now.
We'll see if it looks like he's mousing over the Chainer's Edict. He's not interested in invoking Mulldrifter and trying to get a little bit greedy here.
Yeah, and obviously no Chainer's Edict or anything. Evincar's Justice.
Evincar's Justice wouldn't be able to take out the Skyfisher.
Exactly. But it definitely takes out the Seeker of the Way here. But even then, and that's actually a bit of a heads up play anyway. You know, just get the Cheater's Edict down and just go through it. So we're probably going to see a Glinthawk here picks up the Ancient Den, and then we're just going to see some kill spells going off probably.
This is pretty brutal for Ricardo here. Like with the Glinthawk, he's just spent all of now his sort of bounce birds on just bounce back lands.
Yeah, so
where you want to be.
Right, and the fact that Ricardo, not only is he picking up lands, but he's drawing lands too. Like, he's just not hitting very much by way of gas.
He doesn't really have any reload. If Brian's able to clear this board here, Ricardo can't really play any more threats.
Yeah, but Ricardo has the Pyroblast here to stop the Mulldrifter, so he's definitely bought him in some time, and it may actually come down to Brian rather, needing to play that Thorn of the Black Rose, which then gets a little dangerous because Ricardo can probably just steal it right back by just going in with some flyers. And unfortunately, Ricardo just sees another land. Definitely not looking very good here. But we're definitely gonna be in this for quite the long haul and definitely a bit of a grind.
And off the top is pretty huge for Brian here.
Yeah, even though it is a tap land, now we can see something like we might see a Thorn, or he's just gonna hold up the mana now and just try and go for the Mystical Teachings.
Okay, and Ricardo is winning the race here, so make a move before he takes 12 more points of damage.
Yeah.
Let's see what he can sort of do here.
That's a really heads up play that, Ricardo did not go in with that Glinthawk, just knows that those deserts are there. But at the same time, what would you have done there? Would you maybe have forced the deserts?
I think that was like a super heads up play by Ricardo. I just would have forgot about the deserts and attacked, but I think that was a mistake.
But at the same time, that would also keep Brian here off of mana. So you wouldn't be able to do something like Mystical Teachings.
But I feel like you can't just give up your Glinthawk for free here.
Yeah,
the pressure, because then he has to keep the deserts up every turn.
Since Chad is asking, yes, Ricardo did mulligan to 5, which unfortunately put him in a pretty rough position. Basically mulled down to 3 lands, Core Skyfisher, and a Pyroblast. Not really where we want to be here. And now Brian's got Doomblade, Brian's got Echoing Decay, and Evincar's Justice as well. He's pretty strongly in the driver's seat right now.
Certainly is. Ricardo's going to need to find a
Lightning Bolt's not going to do it.
Glinthawk. Not what he's looking for.
Just not going to do it. So it looks like we're definitely kind of getting to that point where I think Brian's definitely starting to turn the corner here quite comfortably.
Draws have just not really cooperated. He's not able to present pressure anymore.
Nope.
So we'll see sort of decides to close out the game.
Yeah. As soon as we start to see, as soon as Brian gets up to, I believe is it 7 mana or 8 mana for Evincar's Justice buyback? 7,
I believe.
That's what I believe it is. I believe it's 7 mana. I just wish I had it up in front of me. Oh, wait, I do. Let me take a look at that card real fast. It is indeed 7 mana. So as soon as Brian gets to 7 mana, the game's just over. It's done. It's locked up. At that point,
Thorn of the Black Rose is really doing a lot of work here.
Yeah.
And he's able to just drop it, fear of losing the Monarch, and just draw 2 cards every turn.
Yeah. So he's got the Monarch. He's going to keep the Monarch because Ricardo's just drawing these 1/2s. And what's going to end up happening is that Brian's just going to cast the Evincar's Justice with buyback on this next turn, wipe out the Thraben Inspectors, go in for 3 damage with the creatures on his board, and he's also dealing 2 damage per turn to life totals as well.
I suppose Ricardo does have maybe an out if too greedy with the Evincar's Justice. If he uses it 4 times, a cheapy lightning bolt here, but an outside possibility.
Yeah, it's very, very unlikely. And even then, at that point, Brian definitely had his mana held up where he can just then go for the Dispel. Brian's got the Mystical Teachings as well.
Monarch helping him hit land drops is super crucial here.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Brian
all
is
the way set up.
Very, very firmly in the driver's seat right now.
Set up. He's camping outside of like the GameStop. He's got his lawn chair. He's just fully posted up, waiting for the new game to come out.
Yeah, I very strongly feel that at this point, Brian's got this pretty comfortably locked up. I'd be very surprised at this point if Brian does not end up winning this game and the match as a whole.
Looks like he's definitely going to be able to this little battle here.
Yeah, which is unfortunate for Ricardo because he's definitely put up a great fight, but those draws and that opening hand especially just was not working out for him very well.
He's still got a little bit of life. Cannot counter a... So if together like the insane sequence of like Skyfisher into Skyfisher into Skyfisher with maybe like a thrown in, he could maybe get back in this game.
Yeah, but it would definitely require like the perfect sequence of cards. And the fact that Brian's now seen a Counterspell and has double Dispel really kind of makes this very difficult for Ricardo to come back.
That really puts the game future.
So I think we're going to see in very short order Brian take this match. But you're correct. We could still see a play here, but I don't think it's going to happen. We have someone asking, did Brian win his first match? This is actually Brian's very first match of the night. It was myself and Joseph first, and then we ended up going into this match against Ricardo and Brian, and it is taking its sweet time, but it's definitely quite some good matches.
So there is the Palace Sentinels from Ricardo, but with the Counterspell drawn from Brian, it's just not going to be enough.
No, and it's not. There's not a chance that Brian lets that land.
Fog is gonna try to get some advantages here and there, but the Bastion Inventor, the 4/4 that I've never seen in my life, is gonna win the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe I've seen it like once or twice here and there back in the day. Like players tried it, especially for like some like I think there was some weird like hexproof like Bogles kind of decks that ran it at some point or another. It was very strange, but I definitely seen it once or twice in the past. So
it's definitely an interesting card.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see if that maybe shows up at all in the future, but I don't think it really will. It's definitely a very strong card if you get it to land, but you have to get it to land is the big takeaway there.
The Inventor.
So.
The dokie. So here comes the Chainers wrapping up this game. He's got cards, all the mana in the world. Ricardo really protect himself here.
So it's going to be very, very tough for Ricardo at this point here, especially with that Weather the Storm. I just don't see it.
Not even the outside possibilities of like the Galvanic Blast and the Galvanic Blast.
Yeah, just it's very difficult for Brian to lose this point. There's multiple counter spells. There's plenty of removal and even life gain, so that he can just stay in. Even if Ricardo has like the Galvanic Blast, Lightning Bolt sequences and everything like that to try and get there, it's just not going to work out for him.
They got no chance at this point, it looks like.
Yeah, and some Ancient Grudges too. Like this game is just over as far as from where I'm sitting, where I can tell. Obviously, Ricardo's not willing to give it up just yet because he doesn't know quite what's in Brian's hand, but it's not going to really work out in Ricardo's favor at all here.
Next turn, he's going to be able to go for a kill move with, as well as this Evincar Justice.
Yeah. So it's very unfortunate, but Ricardo still does have. Yep, and there we go. There's the match. So we're gonna bring it on back over to us here, and we're gonna just chat it up here. So what did you think of that, Joseph?
I thought that was a pretty sweet match. That was really it feels like a classic matchup. The sort of Teachings control deck against the Skyfisher mid-range deck. Pleasure to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't really see that quite as much as we used to. Like these days, the real control deck of the format is, well, it's Tron all its different forms and varieties. And Teachings has kind of been pushed out of the format a bit, but it does still pop up every once in a while. And it's been actually kind of a bit of a blessing to see it tonight. Definitely something a little more off the beaten path, a little off the radar. And just kind of show off all the kinds of different things that Pauper has to offer.
New way to use Astrolabe too. You know, I like we never really saw those decks use Prophetic Prism in the past, but a lot more decks want access to it.
Yeah. So it's been absolutely excellent. So at this point, we're gonna take a quick moment and get some words in from our sponsors here over at CoolStuffInc.com. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with, let me check here real fast. We got myself versus Brian Coval. So we got Elves versus Sultai Teachings. Joseph, I know you're talking with me here, but what are your thoughts on that particular matchup? Where do you think it's going to fall?
Elves versus Teachings matchup seems pretty interesting. I think it's going to depend on how well line up against the Elves players draw.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not Brian...
It's definitely a bit draw dependent on who gets the kind of like the faster draw and who can outgrind them. Because obviously, like we almost saw this year, that Brian had quite a lot of gas going on, but then there was just a lot of one-for-one trading. And Ricardo pretty much just picked it up and took it over and almost came back before Brian ended up turning the corner. So that's kind of what happens with Elves, is that Elves can just completely, start to go slowly, 1-1-1-1, but then they die, 1-1-1-1, and then Brian's left with nothing, and I can easily refill with a Lead the Stampede or something like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here, and I'm real excited, but for now, we're going to take a moment, hear a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.